As you can see, I am absolutely crazy about nature. I'm so proud of my lilacs. I can't believe I'm saying that. I planted these little bushes 15 years ago when I bought my house. And it's an old area here in Regina. And it was really, really cute. My house is 115 years old. I kind of call it my summer cabin in the city. I am surrounded by trees here. A huge evergreen in the back. Birds, raspberries galore. I can't wait till that starts happening. And my garden is finally popping. I'm so attached to nature. I tried to live in an apartment a few times in my life. And I've hated it every single time. It's not my thing at all. I want to be able to put my feet on the ground outside. I don't want to go out in my bikini and suntan. And most of all, I like my privacy. I really do. I don't like others telling me what I can do and not do. And that's why I've always chosen to live in a house. Attachment to nature is kind of big for a lot of us. We have had the ability to be, where I grew up in Calgary, close to the mountains. All sorts of nature and wildlife around. And what I'm learning about Agenda 2030 is it's totalitarian in nature and seeks to disconnect us from nature, from being grounded in reality. And it's opting for a future that actually disconnects us from humanity further than we've ever been. It's the injection of us into a synthetic world where we are medicated and augmented. And the vaccinations are all part of this augmenting.
This is the doctor who changed the future of the human race and let the world know on YouTube. He Jiankuai stunned the scientific community with the claim he pushed the boundary no one else had.
A line has been crossed that should not have been crossed.
It's very disturbing. It's inappropriate.
Oh, this is huge.
He says he genetically edited human embryos, not just for research but for implantation, leading to the world's first births of genetically altered humans, baby girls born in China from embryos designed to be resistant to HIV.
For this specific case, I feel proud actually.
The tool used by He, called CRISPR, is found in labs around the world.
It gives us the precise way of cutting the gene or putting a new piece of gene in.
For me, it's absolutely detrimental that I do not get a vaccine. And it's because I got a lifetime of asthma from the MMR vaccine. That's why I'm quite passionate about no vaccination. And I didn't understand it at the time. In fact, it was my mom's articulate baby book of me that told the tale as to how I landed with the condition. In my teens, I got a couple of vaccinations for traveling. And I didn't feel well, but I seemed to be okay. It was the flu vaccination when I was 22 that my boss made me get. I was working in a restaurant. I was managing in Horseshoe Bay, BC. And he made me get the flu vaccine, and I was deathly ill. It was a horrible experience. And it was that experience that made me decide that I didn't want to be part of that. I was also medicated as a child all the time because after my MMR and the asthma came on, I also developed extreme allergies in which I used to get weekly steroid shots Yeah, till I was 15. It would come in waves, and it would, I was medicated. And by the time I became a teenager, I stopped taking that steroid inhaler that they told me I had to take. And then the doctor, of course, would give my mom heck because I wasn't taking it and make her feel like a bad parent, which in fact would then roll to me, and then I would have to take my medication. When I left the house at 17 and I went on my way, I stopped filling those prescriptions and I just took my inhaler. And in fact, my condition got better. What I learned through that experience was that I was never being listened to. And it's much like the experience we're all having when we are talking about our medical freedom and what's to come. We are having this vaccination being pushed, and I'm feeling like it's being threatened. Because it has been.
And just finding the vaccine is the first step. The next step will be producing the vaccines in a sufficient number to inoculate everyone or almost everyone. What we know needs to happen to successfully reopen the economy and adjust to our new normal. First, we need to continue scaling up our testing capacity so we can quickly identify new cases and isolate them. We're working with provinces and territories to expand testing by...
Week after week, we continue to hear the propaganda. And we're hearing word that a certain amount of Canadians, 71% of Canadians, want a vaccine. And I'm calling bullshit on that. Because we are all in states of emergency to fulfill this agenda of being vaccinated. Being 99% vaccinated is a goal of Agenda 2030. It is. And it's a reason Sweden didn't get the measures, because they are already at 99% vaccinated. Now, the flu vaccine hasn't been going over for years. For Canada by 2025. And as you can see, they're looking for 95% vaccination for the children, 80% when it gets to the immunococcal vaccine. And then its coverage goals are 80% for the people with the flu vaccine. And as you can see, it's covering everybody, and it's really going after people like me with chronic medical conditions inspired by a vaccine to start with. Now, when you talk about the flu vaccine, the important thing to note is the fact that Canadians only vaccinate for that 31%, and they're looking for 80%.
Older people is always a huge challenge. You know, it turns out the flu vaccine isn't that effective in elderly people. Most of the benefit comes from younger people not spreading it because they're vaccinated, and that benefits on a community basis the elderly. Here,
our entire world is being restructured and has been under the guise of a virus, under COVID-19. Every policy, the way we interact, how we visit a restaurant, pretty much any place where we're going to be public is going to require one. Now, the government's saying they won't do the dirty. And you see, if they pushed it on us, then that would be totalitarian. So what they're going to have their partners do, which were also stakeholders in Agenda 2030, in which the Canadian population never had a...
Hi everyone, I work for Costco and I'm asking this member to put on a mask because that is our company policy. So either wear the mask...
And I'm not doing it because I woke up in a free country.
Have a great day.
So you're going to take this car from me?
Sir, have a great
full
day.
Of stuff.
You are no longer welcome here in our warehouse. You need to leave.
This is a marriage of corporations and government, and they're working in tandem. So what the government can't achieve, the corporations will. That's how it's going. It's the same with the vaccine agenda. They want that vaccine agenda, but they have several agendas. Number one, they want to get every single person on earth wired in. And that means tracked and traced. And you have to ask, why do they need us all tracked and traced? In Canada, we know that not even 1% of the population is affected by this. It's proven itself to be no more than the flu. Yet it shut down the economy, and people are becoming wiser every single day. As we discover these measures are not going away, that they have now been integrated into our entire way of life, that school will never be the same for the children, that policies are being enacted and legislation enacted while we're under states of emergency, that have parliamentarians in Canada saying, what the heck is going on?
Back in January, when we started noticing other countries closing their borders in order to stop the spread of COVID-19, Conservatives asked this government if they would do the same. In response, the Prime Minister called us racist. Does the Prime Minister still consider those who called for the closure of borders racist?
Mr. Speaker, providing misleading information to Canadians is not appropriate. As the member opposite knows, we took strong measures at the border as recommended by the international health regulations. And Mr. Speaker, we were able to contain the virus for quite some time.
Honourable members.
I could not agree with the Minister more that providing misinformation is, in fact, incredibly wrong, which is why the government should simply apologize to the Canadian public for telling them that there was no emergency at our doorstep, that they didn't need to wear a face mask, that we didn't need to close our borders, that their human-to-human contact or contraction wasn't possible. Those are incredibly misleading statements. Why will the Minister not just do the honourable thing and retract them and apologize to the Canadian public?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I maintain that the member opposite does not understand that as new evidence comes forward, in fact, new advice comes forward, and Canadians understand that. I'm unclear why she doesn't.
The Honourable Ms. Harder.
I understand that knowledge evolves. I'm just wondering if the Minister will retract the statements that she made previously now that she understands that they are misleading.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am so proud of Canadians for being able to adapt to new evidence and public health advice as it becomes clearer and clearer in terms of what kinds of actions could protect our health. I want to thank all Canadians for having the trust in the public health officials across this country.
Ms. Harder.
And getting gaslighted.
Ms. Harder.
On February 3rd, Conservatives called on the government to treat this virus as a public health emergency and to take immediate action. Unfortunately, Minister Haidu scolded Conservative MPs, stating that we were, and I quote, spreading misinformation and trying to sensationalize the risk of the virus. Would the Minister like to apologize to the members opposite for that statement?
I don't believe that a lot of the people, the MPs in our government, a lot of them were all in on it. They're wondering what just happened. Now, what's worrisome, moreover than anything, is the fact that we are still under a state of emergency. And I'm looking at 3 provinces where I am that are quite similar to North Dakota, Montana, Idaho. And that's Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. Now, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we're not even on the map with this thing. Yet they're pushing us to test. They are looking for needles in haystacks.
Go out and start testing. He talked yesterday about the prospect of random testing, about testing in particular neighborhoods where there are hotspots. Uber drivers, taxi drivers, limo drivers, people in the food service sector, people in the automotive sector. It was really a laundry list of people he says he's open to seeing tested. He has told officials, he said, in his province that he wants to see a new plan. He's promising to folks that there is going to be something coming on testing as of about Monday. But certainly he's pitching something much broader. Federal officials are saying across the country, country. We heard it from the Prime Minister yesterday. Financial concerns, logistical concerns, they should not be what's driving this.
Or are they just collecting? When Trudeau won't even take a test, when his mother won't take a test, when he doesn't have his own children test, I have to wonder why he's pushing all of us for a test. In any case, these demands are invasive. Yet, the goal seems to be to track us, trace us, and then have public health manage us.
Well, for those of you with specialized skills looking to help our frontline workers, we do want to hear from you. Health Canada is building an inventory of specialized volunteers that provinces and territories can draw on to provide more support to our healthcare workers. This could include tracking cases and tracing contact, as well as collecting and reporting data. If you can help, please sign up online at canada.ca/coronavirus.
Where they will have trackers and tracers invading our privacy to alert us that we must go for a test. Now, the thing is, they're not going to fashion it as you must go for a test. They're going to suggest it. And if you do not take their suggestion, then you're going to get self-isolated for 14 days. This is how this is going to roll until there is a vaccination. It's scary stuff. It really is. Now, for someone like me, as I keep saying, or any of us who will not comply with this, they are going to literally push us out of society. This is the plan. They are going to make it so difficult for us to operate. And I believe eventually, if we are not vaccinated, that we just won't get treated. What's even scarier is the fact that in the vaccine trials that they have held, the people have gotten sick.
It didn't cause too many side effects, and it does wake up the immune system. Canadian scientists are working with the Chinese company behind this vaccine, which could protect people from COVID-19.
The story is this safe enough to go on to a next phase? And the answer is yes, it is.
Phase 1 trials are small. In this case, 108 healthy adults in China were injected with either a small, medium, or large dose of the vaccine. The large dose did prompt some side effects and won't be used in Phase 2.
The bottom line for me is that as a naturalist, I believe in natural processes. And it means that I've never eaten genetically modified foods. I don't eat them. I don't want foreign DNA in my body because I don't believe it belongs. And I don't really care what science has to say about it.
One final way that's new and is promising is called the RNA vaccine. With RNA and DNA, instead of putting that shape in, you put instructions in the code to make that shape.
They are rushing a vaccine.
The most urgent invention in the world right now is a vaccine that prevents you from getting COVID-19.
And they are using a multilateral opportunity to contain us into the medical matrix of the future. That won't stop just with the vaccine. It's about medicating. So a person like me who has decided to pursue natural means as best as I can in order to maintain my health and well-being is being threatened with intervention and actually the potential of worse health than where I am. I'm not willing to take that risk.
Here, we clearly need a vaccine that works in the upper age range because they're most at risk of that. And doing that so that you amp it up so it works in older people and yet you don't have side effects. If we have, 1 in 10,000 side effects, that's, way more, 700,000, people who will suffer from that. So
it's when you see things like Kawasaki syndrome that has emerged and is apparently a manifestation of COVID-19. Yet, interestingly enough, it is a potential side effect of the MMR booster.
So, how do you make a vaccine? Usually you're injecting at least part of the shape of the virus. Sometimes you do the whole virus, but it's attenuated so it doesn't multiply too much. Sometimes you take the virus and you kill it. You won't get sick because they're not duplicating. What's typically done is you just take either a piece of the virus or just the spike, that thing on the surface, and you put it on something else. So there's no risk at all of causing the disease.
This is the product monograph for Priorix, which is the combined measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, live and attenuated. And just so you know, live means that it's transmittable, it sheds. Of course, it meets you-know-who's requirements. Let's go down to page 9, where we're going to find the post-market adverse drug reactions. Of course, I was drawn right away to the vascular disorder, which was and included Kawasaki syndrome right here, as well as vasculitis, including Henoch scolium purpura. While we're here, let's just take a look at the other manifestations of this vaccine. Infections and infestations, meningitis, which includes measles-like syndrome, mumps-like syndrome, including orchitis, epididymitis, and parotitis. Interestingly enough, I got the measles right after the MMR booster. I don't know if it was this one. Blood and lymphatic system disorders are thrombocytopenia and thrombocytopenic purpura. Immune system disorders are anaphylactic reactions. Those are allergic reactions. The nervous system disorders include encephalitis, cereballitis-like symptoms, including transient gait disturbance and transient ataxia, aseptic meningitis, traverse myelitis, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. Interestingly enough, that's what my dad had when he collapsed from the flu vaccine 12 years ago and was paralyzed from the waist down for a month. Vascular disorders, of course, we covered those. The skin and subcutaneous tissue disorders are arrhythmia multiforme. I have to research that. We've got the musculoskeletal connective disorders, astralia and arthritis. Accidental intravascular administration may give rise to severe reactions or even shock.
Just in case you didn't know about that. These are the things that are happening. I don't want to be wired into a medical matrix. I don't want to be medicated. Again, we have the right to choose what we put in our bodies. And just because a few billionaires think that we should go about our life according to their program doesn't mean I have to do it. Now you've got to realize that they are literally shifting us into this. And once we're in, we're not getting out. And that brings me to my next point. as we are under these states of emergency, we cannot move. We simply can't. And what's happening is this radical legislation is happening right before our very eyes, under the wire, while we are in a state of emergency. I'm appalled that our government would be wiring us into this medical matrix in which, once we're in, there is no escape. We need to be public because there are a lot of people in hiding right now, and we need to get them out. This affects all of us. And again, it's beyond vaccination. It is centralized government dictating to us how we live our lives. And they're not going to stop with the tracking and the tracing and the vaccination. It's coming down to everything and what they deem sustainable. Now, when we start seeing CCP, Chinese Communist Party policies landing in the West, in Canada, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, it's shocking to me how that can be.
In Shanghai, life is going back to normal. But caution remains high and new tools are being used to avoid a second wave of infections. QR codes have now become the passports that allow Chinese people to move around. To get into a shop, one must show a green health code proving good health. This is obtained by scanning a mosaic through a mobile app. The green health code depends on a number of different factors, including travel history in the last 14 days. For the customers, the system is reassuring. But for those who obtain a red code and are in good health, no explanation is given. This is the case for this man, who had no one to appeal to when he just finished quarantine after a trip to a different province.
因为我们这边写字楼就是需要登记嘛，还需要每天的一个测温。第一次需要出示这个随身码，它需要判断你是否正常健康，所以就是我当时是红色，就没有办法，不太合理吧，但是也是一种防疫的一种手段吧。
The precautionary measures are reinforcing the Chinese state's surveillance. After analyzing the code of one of these apps, this journalist found that once registered, the user's data was handed over to the police.
We are free people. Some of the freest I've ever met. Have we become so complacent we cannot recognize that our world is being shifted in a direction that denies common sense and that benefits the corporations and their government partners and their sustainability? It's not about ours. It's not about humanity's. I believe in free will and that society evolves around that free will. And it's absolutely contrary to where these billionaires are taking us.